we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Getting Personal with Compt. This is a show that is all about discussing the ways that we can create not just a better employee experience, but a more human experience. We're always talking about the future of work and what that means. How do we make the workplace more diverse, equitable, inclusive? And I think that has to do a lot with the ways that we are attracting and retaining talent. So I am so glad that I am joined today by Erica Keswin. She's a workplace expert, best-selling author, and I have the book to prove it.
Yay.
I'm
All
very
right.
excited for this. Erica, can you introduce yourself a little bit for our audience?
Sure. Thank you so much, Lauren, for having me. As you said, I've been working in the people space for 25 plus years, which I describe as helping companies improve bottom line performance through people. And so all the different ways that covers, from looking at recruiting to compensation to performance management, and really aligning the people strategy to the business strategy. So I'm excited to be here. This new book's on employee retention, and excited to dive in.
So I feel like this is a very significant title, and diving into retention is like opening a can of worms, I feel like these days. So, retention revolution, how do you define that? What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I love that question because I even asked myself, is this really a revolution? Can I really be putting this in the title? And I would say that the workplace is going through a revolution right now. And the way that I think about the retention revolution is really shifting everything that we thought about work, like, because so much of it has changed. And so when we think about the workplace today, in many places, and I'm sure you see this in your work, there are up to 5 generations of people working under one roof. And
Mhm.
people bring their own generational, differences, and people want different things. And one of the big issues is that people aren't staying in one company forever, like the days of IBM and General Motors working, staying there for your whole career. Now people, they're not staying 10 years, 5 years. People are creating portfolio careers and really just thinking about work differently. So the retention revolution is, if we are really intentional about how we onboard people, almost like addressing that elephant in the room from day one. Lauren, I'm so glad you're joining me in my company. Um, it's great to have you. We know that you may not stay here forever, but while you're here, we're going to create the best experience that we can. We're going to help you develop up, down, and sideways. We are going to connect you, with colleagues and with customers, and do the things that we know that are good for you as a human, but also for our business. But we're not doing them to give you these golden handcuffs to tie you to the chair. We're doing them
Mm.
because while you are with us, we want you to be happy, engaged, productive. And then at the backside, if we're really intentional about how we offboard, setting aside if someone cheats or steals, that's sort of off the table. But Lauren, if you come to me and you've been there for a while and you're ready to move on, instead of me saying, okay, Lauren, you're dead to me, or don't let the door hit you in the behind, um, if I think creatively about ways to stay connected, we see work becoming much more of a virtuous cycle. And that really is this revolution in work. And we have to, if some people, for older people like me, it is harder to change that thinking. Why do all this stuff if they're going to leave anyway? And I would then say, well, they're probably going to leave anyway, but if you're doing some of the things that I know we'll get into in the book, you, as one of my top people, you might stay 6 more months or a year or a year
Mm.
and a half. And there are real bottom line implications to keeping people longer, especially your top people.
100%. Something that you said right off the bat really resonated with me because it's a conversation that my younger brother and I have had with our parents. I have also had with my in laws, where, for example, my in laws worked in powdered metal manufacturing for the entirety of
Hmm.
their careers. My mom worked on the same floor as a nurse for 30 years, and she only recently got a new job, still within the same network, but doing she has different duties, different tasks, different schedule.
Hmm.
And my brother and I had to have like this come to Jesus moment with her where we were like, you have the skills to do something else. You are desirable elsewhere. Like you can do this. You can advance
Hmm.
your career in other ways. And our families had seen all of us jump around from so many different jobs. I mean, I can't even count how many I've had in the last 10 years. And it feels like I'm carefully creating this portfolio that will then take me into whatever comes next. So I'm so glad that you touched on that.
Yeah, and I also am seeing, this whole idea of staying, keeping employees connected, and saying goodbye in a way that's more quote unquote graceful.
Mm.
The grass isn't always greener. People have been leaving. They get there, they think the grass is green. It's actually brown, and then they come back. And so they come back as boomerangs, or they come back as clients or as customers. And so, I heard a really interesting statistic that I think will help frame this for some people, that might think this is so foreign. There was a study done in the legal industry that found that lawyers coming into law firms right out of law school, only 30% of them are saying that they even desire to be a partner. So if people are coming in and that's not even their goal, why are we kind of pretending when people enter our companies that they are going to be there forever, right? It's almost like we're going to date instead of, we're dating. We're not necessarily getting married.
Right.
And so this one law firm in particular during their onboarding will say, look, look to the left, look to the right. Not everybody even wants to be a partner. However, if you are here with us, we're going to, again, help you grow and develop. And if you come to us and say, you know what, I don't want to be, I'd rather go be an in-house counsel instead of working at a law firm. I want to go work at Spotify. You know what? We will help you do that. And again, in professional services, it makes that much more sense because people can become clients and customers. But it's really thinking about these issues differently and holistically, because the desires of people are changing.
That's true. So, one thing that we talk about a lot as an HR tech company is how HR is tasked with so much of what you and I are talking about right now. A lot of the career development and the stay interviews, the exit interviews, dealing with the onboarding, the boomerang employees falls into the lap of HR. But what about direct managers? Like, what role do they play in this revolution? Because we know that the employee experience, if you look at it holistically, isn't just up to HR.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I love this question. The one of the most best well-known studies out of Gallup, I keep coming back to, is that people leave managers. They're not leaving companies, and they're not leaving HR unless it's a rare case. They are leaving managers. And, if we were to go back 6 months ago, we would have seen, and this is still happening in some places, but, the likes of Meta and Google and companies firing their middle managers and trying to save money and sort of flatten the organizations. I was and am against that. I think it's not a great idea, especially now that middle managers, I call them in my book, they are the MVPs of the retention revolution. And, just like, if you have a middle child, maybe people don't like the word middle, but maybe it could be team leader or these managers that are in the center, but they are in the center of the organization. They are the connection point between the leaders and between all of the people on the front lines of your organizations. So to retain people, we collectively as a society, I believe we need to elevate the role of the manager. I call it elevate and celebrate. We need to give them recognition, and we need to train them and give them the skills. And I know that learning and development is part of what you all look at as well. And so to me, it's investing in that part of the employee experience. If I had a big company right now, I would be investing in these managers.
So this is something that I feel like has been an ongoing conversation. I mean, I am fairly new to the HR world, but I am definitely not unfamiliar with the struggles of the employee experience, attraction, retention. And I'm not even talking about just the last 3 years, because we know that things have totally exploded since
Yeah.
COVID. The future of work is no longer the future of work, it is the now of work. And one thing that I wondered in looking over your book and even just reading the title Retention Revolution, how do you capture this when this topic when it is something that is changing so rapidly?
It's so hard because at some point, the book needs to be turned in and you have to put
Right.
a stake in the ground. And every day, I hear about a new story or a new anecdote, and I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could include that. That all being said, I really try in all of my books, and this one in particular, to focus on stories that and examples and things that are very practical that remain true regardless of where the pendulum is swinging, let's say from an economic, perspective. And so, yes, you have to cut it off, but when I keep threading the needle and reading the book back and looking at the chapters, and so much of it's relevant whether we're in the Great Resignation or it's relevant when we're in the Great Recession, or depending on who has the power, the employers and the employees. The concepts in
Mm.
the book around creating a more human workplace, helping people grow and develop, elevating your managers, thinking about the role of flexibility in your company, these are going to be important regardless of these constant swings and sort of the memes of the month. So that is something that I really put a lot of effort and work to make sure that's the case.
What other challenges did you face in writing this aside from trying to write something that was evergreen and would resonate with really both sides of the coin? What else did you come across?
Yeah, in my work, some people will say, well, is this written from the perspective of the leader and the manager? How do you design a workplace that will enable you to retain people, or is it for anybody that might be looking for a job? And that was always something that I'm like, can I write something that both sides, all these different demographics can relate to? And I think that it does hit both sides. You just have to frame it differently. So let's say on the one hand, leaders and managers, even if you're managing two people, small company, big company, a department, a team, can really think about, how do we onboard in a hybrid remote world? How can I, even with very little budget, really elevate my managers? How can I be more intentional about offboarding? So the leadership piece is there for sure. The other side, though, the way that I think about it, if I'm saying, all right, you know what, I want to look for a new job, and there's so many different things out there and different companies, a way to take my book and apply it to someone looking for a job is to just flip it and say, wow, if I were to look at all of these things in the book and I were to have three job opportunities, which one of them really addresses all of these important things in the book, and almost use it as like a checklist. How
Mm.
does this company I'm looking at think about flexibility? And it also can give you questions to ask in an interview, especially the chapter. I always say I love all my children, all my chapters equally, but I do think one of my favorite ones is the chapter that's called From Ladders to Lily Pads. Even
Ooh.
you talk about your mom, right, who just got this new job after being in the ladder
Mhm.
for 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
Companies need to be really creative about how they move people around and across. So it's like hopping right across to all the lily
Yes.
pads. And if you're reading this chapter from I'm a junior person and where should I go next? You can be thinking about, wow, does this new company provide me opportunities? If I'm in sales, what about if I want to be in marketing? Do they ever do anything creative to move people around? And so I think you it was something that as I was writing it and sort of in my head toggling back and forth, and really tried to make sure it was applicable to both.
It's so interesting to me because I think that as an employee, for the longest time, it these were things that I never thought about. I didn't understand where I fit in within the processes in of an organization. I didn't understand the nuances of all these things. And now that I am working so closely with human resources professionals, I'm realizing that these little nuggets of information that are helpful for their careers are helpful for mine as well. Even if I don't plan on being, an HR professional or an HR business partner or anything, those things that you mentioned, like knowing what questions to ask in an interview, kind of being able to see the red flags even in an organization
Mhm.
of based on my experience in this interview, they said something that I feel like might not align with what I'm looking for. Like maybe I don't want the partner track, maybe
Right,
I want
right,
to
and
develop in
that's
full
okay.
time. Right.
Right. 100%.
This is fantastic. I'm very excited about this conversation because I am realizing so much more about how impactful employee retention and experiences for everybody. I feel like a lot of times I have these conversations, we talk about the role of the manager and how things trickle down. But there is this give and take relationship, I think, that impacts everyone in an organization. So I wanted to ask you, because things are just ever changing in this talent marketplace, in this economic market, everything as a whole right now. What should we expect from this revolution? I guess both in the near term and the long term, because you said this is applicable for the Great Resignation or the Great Recession. So whatever comes next, what should we expect?
I mean, right, your things are just moving. We'll wait. Tomorrow will be from the lazy girl job to the
Oh
quitting
gosh,
loudly to I mean, who knows? Who
I
knows
know.
what's
I want a
next?
lazy girl job. That sounds pretty good.
Oh, we could have a whole 20-minute conversation just about the lazy girl job. So what do I see around the retention revolution? Um, it's to me, it is, when I wrote my first book, Bring Your Human to Work, the subtitle was 10 Surefire Ways to Design a Workplace That's Good for People, Great for Business, and Just Might Change the World. And I will say that I think that the retention revolution, and if people listening to this from the leader and manager side begin to think about implementing these things, I feel like the result is going to be the same. That
Mm,
implementing and doing many of the bringing some of these concepts to life, being really intentional about how you onboard, connecting what each person does in the company to a greater purpose, helping people understand who they are personally and developing them, not just professionally, but also growing as a person. All of these things are good for people. They have clear bottom line impacts. And I do believe that they will change the world, because as the demographics shift and people are living longer and working longer, and we have 5 generations of people working under one roof, and we're figuring out ways to help, older people stay in the workforce, all of these things, um, I think will have a positive impact. Now, the good news is it it's not rocket science. That doesn't make it easy, and it comes down to being really intentional. And so
mm,
my hope with this that a book like this gives people a guide to kind of pick and choose where they want to start. There's examples in the books from big companies and from small companies, so you can have an impact even with a very small budget, as well as a much bigger budget. So, and the last thing I will say is, and I'm sure you're seeing this in your work with HR leaders and in all the work that you do, small things can make a huge difference. And so, don't feel like you need to take on the world to begin to see some incremental changes.
I had a conversation about that recently, actually, because we were talking about how difficult budgets are right now. And it feels like you need money to move the needle. But there are so many things that you can do in the meantime to make that positive change in the workplace. We talked about things as simple as rewriting job descriptions so that they're more inclusive. Um,
Hmm.
I want to ask you, because we've touched on this throughout our conversation. But I really want to know, who should read this book? Who is it designed for? Like, what audience will really benefit from this? Is it necessarily more so geared toward like those middle managers, or just across the board, everyone will get something from this?
Well, I'm biased, since I wrote it, and I do think there's a nugget in there for everyone. But I would say that if you are in an organization and you're leading really anything, are you leading a project? Are you leading a team? Are you leading a department? Um, I would say if I had to pick one, I mean that's a broad one, but it again, it could be a leader who has an intern working for that person because you're thinking about all of these issues. I would also say, and people have shared this with me that have previewed the book, I focus mostly on employee retention, but let's say you're in a role where you're focused on customer retention.
Mm.
A lot of the themes are the same. So, again, if you are managing anyone, anything, um, I will say you will really get a return on investment from this book.
And before we go, I have one bonus question that I would just really love to ask you.
Okay.
Because I know that I can tell this is something that you're so passionate about. What was your favorite learning in writing this book, whether it was an interview or conversation that you had, or something that you uncovered, something that has stuck with you since drafting it to almost now launching for publication?
Wow. I mean, one thing. Okay.
I know it's so hard. I'm really good at
It's so
asking
hard.
the loaded questions here.
Oh my God. Okay. So this is what I'm going to say. You know, post pandemic, and we've been as a world, we've been through a lot over the last couple of years, and people are dealing with loneliness and isolation, and this whole idea of we're back in the office and we're one step forward, two steps back, and been a very stressful time. And one of the anecdotes that I heard on a podcast and interviewed some people and that I write about is this one little shift of what a leader said and what a difference it made. And so I'll give it away here in our conversation. But what I thought was interesting about it is again not rocket science, but really makes a difference. And the key for leaders right now is and I promise I'll give you the punchline of what this person said. But during the pandemic, many leaders, just because we didn't have a choice, right? We had dogs in the background, kids in the background, sadly, people passing away. I mean, we were more human almost by default because we
Yeah.
had to be. And now, as things have gone back, the key is as managers and leaders, how do we continue to stay connected to our employees? Because it's the right thing to do, but it will also impact retention. So we need to keep checking in with the people that work with us, and of course the people in our lives. And so one of the leaders said in his team meeting, they all go around, and he asked this question: how are you really really doing? And even in a one-on-one, because we know if you and I got on this call today, and I'm like, hey Lauren, how you doing? And you might think, does she really want to know the answer to hey, how are you doing? And then you're like, okay, box check, on to the next.
Hmm.
And so this whole idea of, and this is in the chapter in the book that's called the human professional, is
Hmm.
being a human professional an oxymoron or something that's really critical? I would say something that's really critical. And just these small things of how are you really really doing can just open up so many possibilities.
I'm so glad I asked that question, because that is just the perfect nugget to end on. So great, Erica. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate The Retention Revolution. For those who would like to read, where can they find it? How can they find it? When can they find it? Because people are going to need to read this.
Oh, thank you. So you can buy this book wherever books are sold. You can find out about it on my website, which is ericakeswin.com, and I have links to all of my books. It's available for pre-order now. It comes out on September 26th. And I'm telling people, if they pre-order a copy, they can send me an email at ericakeswin.com, and I'm doing a webinar for all about this idea of elevating the managers. For anybody that pre-orders, sort of come and hear me really go into detail, like I do at many of the conferences that I speak at. But I'm going to do it for anybody that pre-orders a book.
That's fantastic. So everyone has to pre-order because I feel like you're not going to want to miss that webinar. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate your time today. For everyone else who's watching, if you would like to be a guest on Getting Personal with Compt and just chat with me about how we can make the employee experience more human, send me an email at lauren@compt.io. Thanks, everyone.